I am bringing on, as I do occasionally, my good friend, my occasional co-host, I guess, and of course, the producer of this podcast and all things that we put out here at Knicks Film School, Andrew Claudio. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello, the Alfred to your Batman, as many a Knicks Film School post-game live chat participant will want to remind me of, which is still arguably the most embarrassing moment of my online life, is forgetting Alfred in the Batman universe.
See, I look at it a different way. I don't think it's we talked about this a little bit. I don't think it's appropriate because Alfred is not capable of donning the cape and cowl and going out there and swinging from buildings and fighting crime, whereas you are perhaps more qualified and capable.
There isn't a comic where he is like actually Batman. Is
there really?
No, I'm asking. This is where I would hope this is where we need somebody with more knowledge of the canon of Batman. John, how are you enjoying this somewhat of a break this week?
Yeah, so that's a good place to start. So if you are a loyal listener of the show, or at least you pay attention to when we drop episodes, you'll know that we diverted this week. I mentioned something to that effect in the intro to the Locker Room pod, which replaced this week's Monday podcast. Obviously, this is the only other pod we're dropping this week. We'll get back to normal next week. It's been a necessary break. It's been...
Say that again. Yeah.
It's been like, you know what? It hit me. It's so... as you obviously know, but for any of our listeners who don't know, I kind of, once I took the newsletter to a new level before the season, it was really important to me to be able to produce newsletters that were comprehensive analyses of the previous night's game, which often means me staying up until 2 or 3 in the morning. And then so that was obviously going on for all the games down the stretch of the season. But then when you factor in, I think, and this might sound ridiculous to some people, but I'll say it anyway because I'm always honest, when you factor in kind of the emotional gravity and weight of the season, where you really felt like, oh my God, this is like such a huge game. And then like it was the winning streak into the West Coast swing, into those must-win games at the end of the season. And then you had, obviously the playoffs. It was just very heavy. It was a lot of heaviness. And I'm like, I was thinking this week, I'm like, my God, how do the players deal with this? Because I'm a fucking podcaster. Yeah. And I'm sitting here and being like, man, I really need a break. Like, how do players get through 4 rounds of playoffs? And I can't sit behind a microphone for 5 playoff games.
Well, maybe this is where we give Kyrie and KD and Harden all the credit in the world for taking most of the regular season off, so that way they have all these bullets ready to fire
Kawhi?
Here in the post. Look at Kawhi. Exactly.
Rest load management.
So now we know next year, the 2022 season, John's just going to take all of February and March off, so that way he's ready for the home stretch in the postseason.
Yeah, but it really, I swear to you, it really did make me think and appreciate players who are able to. Listen, we hate on LeBron James sometimes, but the guy's won championships in seasons where he played pretty much every game. So kudos to him. So yeah, it was a nice necessary break just to get away from it all a little bit. Still writing, obviously, but getting away from this aspect. How has it been for you?
Well, so I've hinted at it during the season that I have a move in my future coming up, and I hope those of you on YouTube that have enjoyed the man cave that I built for you and get one last good look, because the next time you probably see me on this podcast, it'll be from a different location permanently for the foreseeable future. There's literally, I don't know if it's off camera or in the shop, but there is a pile of clothes that will be in a suitcase in the not too distant future.
It is off. Maybe I think that's what I'm looking at in the corner.
So you might see it, but I might edit it out of the shot and post.
Okay. So that's fine.
Regardless, I mentioned it in the last live stream that, and I can now say it because it's now in the past, that I had a surprise thing for my girlfriend this weekend who had a birthday, and I also almost spoiled her surprise party during the live stream, which then ended up happening on Saturday. It was, I don't want to say it was a relief that the season ended so that other things could get our attention, but I don't know how you feel, but seeing what the Hawks have done, and I had this running thing where I thought the Hawks were great and everybody gave me shit for it. I didn't think they were potentially what Eastern Conference Finals good. I just thought they could beat the Knicks in 6. was my take. And now seeing the playoffs, like, oh, the Knicks, like they had a great season this year. I wouldn't trade it for anything. They were a year ahead of schedule. And Jeremy brought up a good point about the Laker game, that maybe they were running out of gas down the stretch and we just didn't notice it. And come playoff time, teams figured out, let's just double Randall, and then the shooting numbers will start to level off to some type of normalcy. You know, that the 9-game winning streak, as great as it was, maybe it was more of a mirage than we thought, but still sets them up in a great position for the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, look, you could look at it so many different ways, because the season, I don't know what's the positive connotation of spiraled out of control. It's like spiraled out of control in a good way. I don't think they spiraled out of control, though. I think they ran out of gas. That's the thing. No. I'm talking about the 9-game winning streak, and then winning whatever they won, 16 of 20 games.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about before that, we were all still sitting here thinking the same thing that we think about the Knicks right now, which is that, oh, this is a really fun story. This team is fought hard, and they've been in so many games we didn't expect them to be in. Sure, they haven't really beat anybody good, but like, and then the win streak happened, and if you go back and you really examine the win streak, they were gelling and they were clearly feeling something, but there were a lot of tense moments in that streak. And then, and I agree with you. Jeremy's point was a fantastic one, about how the Lakers game was really our first signal, and even so, Tibbs has his Coach of the Year trophy now, his second Coach of the Year trophy, I should say. And Windhorse made a good point on his podcast. I think it was yesterday or on Monday or Tuesday, whatever it was, earlier this week, where, I think he said in his view, the result of the Hawks series, not the result as much as the eye test, like just looking at those games, was almost more of a validation for Tibbs winning that trophy, because it's like, wow, this team really does not have the same caliber of talent as Atlanta, or for that matter, turn on literally any playoff game right now, and you could say the same thing about the Knicks and a lot of let's be honest, all of these teams, in addition to a few teams that got eliminated. I mean, Dallas, I know we beat Dallas once this year. I know we finished with a slightly better net rating than Dallas, or maybe it was about even, whatever. Like, they were a year away, and they outkicked their coverage this season, to borrow an analogy from another sport. And that's fine. And that's fine. And that's good that we can sit here and we can realize that now, as we watch the rest of the playoffs, and maybe have some other takeaways. So, yeah, that's good observation.
Well, so it's not even so much that they were a year away. It's that, the 22 win projection by Vegas, or whatever the over-under was.
21.5 was the one I always used, yeah.
So 21.5, it's almost as if they skipped a step. They went from being a year away to now a year ahead of schedule. I don't think to say this team hosted a playoff series, regardless of how that playoff series went.
Yeah.
I think that matters, especially going into this summer.
Well, why? So can we talk about that for half a second?
Yeah.
In terms of why it matters, there's the perception around the league conversation about, oh, the Knicks are here now. They're a 41-win team. They got a home playoff series. They're a player away. Maybe I should be that player or help, get them there. That's one conversation. And then to me, a somewhat related but mostly different conversation is they have figured out a sustainable formula here to basically come into our program. It's a family dynamic. It's we work hard, play hard. I don't know what playing hard they do, but whatever. They get along well, but they do work hard. Clearly, nobody's gonna beat around the bush as far as Tibbs' requirements, and if you don't do it his way, you're gonna be gone. I guess it's both of those things, but I don't know which is more or less. That's the other thing I've been thinking about.
Well, going from the Tibbs way, which I think you and I, whether we get called Tibbs apologists or not, is just irrelevant. The guy won Coach of the Year and got 41 wins and a playoff berth, let alone a home playoff series from a team that was supposed to win 21 games. Just that elevator pitch alone. Oh, so he was the Coach of the Year. Great.
Makes it a lot easier to be an apologist.
I just think eventually, though, which is why I really hope Johnny Bryant stays on his coaching staff. Eventually, though, some of that might get tired, especially if superstars don't want to come play here. But that's a whole different level of conversation to have now, because I thought we were a year or two away from even thinking of being the 4 seed or making the play. Like, you know what I'm saying? So
moving. How well? But that really is. I mean, if we're getting ahead of ourselves, and these are things that we'll talk about over the course of the summer, have the goalposts really been moved? And that's probably the overarching question of the summer.
Well, this I think leads to like one of the two things I wanted to talk about with you during this little intro is there should be some rules that seasoned Knicks fans have learned by now when it comes to reading the internet scuttlebutt and the rumors. And the first and foremost thing is understanding that an incompetent New York has always been mentioned in trade rumors and free agent destinations, because every agent wants to get their client the most money and the best deal possible. So throwing the New York Knicks into conversation will drive up the price and create a bidding war, especially with the cap space that they have. We saw this all through that mini offseason that they had. It's how Gordon Hayward got a better deal. It's how a bunch of other guys got a better deal. Now the Knicks are competent. That's only going to get worse. And for your own sanity, guys, Bagley, Woj, Shams, Windhorst to an extent, like there are key names you listen to. You don't listen to the other guys. There's just certain names that if you just hear rumor or I heard or potential like mutual interest, no, wait for the main people to give you sources. And then we go from there.
So I want to, yes, Woj, Shams. I don't want to. This is tough because we've had a lot of people.
Berman's on that list too. Like, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody by leaving like the guys I didn't say, but there are certain names that there are certain buzzwords too. Mutual interest does not mean the Knicks are going to sign Kelly Oubre. Like, come on, guys, we've been through this before. But that was a Berman report. Look, Berman's got a lot of stuff right over the years. But he puts. Let's just say this: Mark will put more stuff out there than Ian. And I one of my favorite moments in the 300 some odd episodes of this podcast was when I asked Ian about his process in terms of how do you go about like, okay, I feel comfortable putting this out there. When do you do that? And the way he spoke about it made it very clear, to me at least, and it should, I think, be clear to everybody. If you hear something from Ian Bagley, like it's rock solid, and in terms of just like, is there actual fire where the smoke is coming from? Woj, again, I don't, Woj will speak in generalities sometimes, but if he gives you a specific name, and he doesn't usually give you a name unless it's already happened. Sham, same thing, but short of those guys, you're going to hear a lot of stuff. And I just take it all with several grains of salt. That's the biggest ground rule. I'm trying to think. Can I send another one about anyone, especially any national or local media person who is like, the Knicks need to step up before next season. Like, they won 41 games. If they don't do something to make it X number of wins or whatever, then like that, I know that's going to be out there. And I know it's unavoidable. I'm writing a little bit about it later this week. And like, I get that. But like, if you are someone who is, again, loyal listener to this pod and like tries to not like, sometimes we'll get sucked into the noise and sometimes won't. Don't get sucked into that. Just continue assessing. This would be my 2 cents. Continue assessing the moves that the organization makes based on the little internal voice you have. Like, does this seem smart or does this seem like, just take it one step at a time. Like, there was no magic wand last offseason. There was no magic wand this trade deadline. There's not going to be any magic wand this offseason. I feel like that falls under the common sense rule of.
You'd think so.
Listen, I don't understand common practices with Twitter anymore. I've adopted the mentality of, like, I'm here for the jokes. That's why every single report that happens, I try to find the funny and either tweet it out or look for somebody that has tweeted it out and retweet it. That is my philosophy with that app, as far as I'm concerned. I can't let especially, and this, I don't know how much we should get into it. I think it's just important to mention, if people who are TV characters, like have a show on the worldwide leader in sports from 10 to, like, we don't have to mention, like, say names, but like, do not get completely triggered by someone that knows that Knicks equal clicks and drive ratings a certain way.
I mean, that goes without saying, though, doesn't it? I mean,
it hopefully does, but like, leave his mentions alone. Then
that to me is common sense. That that you shouldn't be judging your team based on someone who gets paid for entertainment, not information.
Thank you. But like, that's the thing, and like, shout out to CP, who's like capitalized on that. I'm happy for him.
God bless.
But like, a failed rapper that really is more of a boxing expert shouldn't be the person that triggers Knicks fans into thinking that this season wasn't a success. Yeah, that's more where I stand on that. So
pay no mind to that.
That's the common sense is where I'm going to.
Pay no mind. I do think this offseason is going to be very challenging for Leon Rose, because I do think that he will feel pressure to return. You don't think so?
I thought he felt pressure last offseason. Like, that there was like, you got to make an immediate splash. And he went into this season with a roster that we all thought wasn't more than like 27, 28 wins. And that's high for, like, that was going to beat the Vegas over-under. And he got 41 wins out of it. So I actually think he has more credibility if he passes on certain guys, knowing what next offseason, what the free agent list could be.
So I think the interesting part there, we're not going to spend too much time on this now. Right. Again, we're just kind of laying the groundwork. The interesting part there is I really do feel like the NBA has become a league where you kind of have to strike while the iron is hot, or at least the way it seems like almost every GM acts. Especially GMs in big markets, is strike while the iron's hot, and you want to capitalize. That's what it is. You want to capitalize on success, and when the success starts to subside, does it become harder to capitalize on that success the further away you get from it? And if we're sitting here a year from now, and the Knicks have, I don't know, and we're assuming we play an 82-game season, the Knicks have finished 41-41, and they got into the 8th seed, and maybe they or the 9th seed, and they won a play-in game, and then they lost another one, but there was some signs of internal improvement and this and the other thing, and like maybe somebody they signed and whatever, like, was okay, like, is there, and they don't get anybody big next summer. Like, I think that's Leon Rose's doomsday scenario. And I think, but again, it's resisting the temptation not to do anything stupid, because you're acting out of fear of that possibility. We got to make sure we have a certain modicum of aggression, because, there is buzz right now. And look, what is that going to come down to? That's going to come down to dollars and cents. Who do you offer the money to? Who do you believe in? It's going to, they have to make good decisions. But I disagree. I think there's some pressure on them. I really do feel there's some pressure on them.
It depends where the pressure's coming from, because I think Dolan, seeing what the Garden became and how that might be their best recruiting tool, in my opinion. Just like, go look at what happened on an Obi Toppin alley-oop. Like, now imagine you playing there 82 games a year. That's where you said the not doing anything stupid. Like, what trade is going to make them a championship contender? That's where like the Dame Lillard stuff, like, that's a whole other conversation for the future.
Yes, but
them being patient and building the right way is more where I see them going with this. And if that means they don't get anybody a big whale this offseason, but they keep their assets and flexibility going into next summer, I feel like the majority of Knicks fans will be rational enough to see, hey, like, they're building something here. This is part of the process.
It's fascinating from the perspective of like, well, this will transition to the last thing we're going to talk about, which is the playoff teams that maybe the Knicks should or shouldn't be rooting for right now. Well, this doesn't have to do with that, but Atlanta went out and I think I personally thought they overspent. Even like Bogdanovich, was a contract that looks quite frankly great now.
Yeah.
When that contract was signed, I'm like, a little bit much. Gallinari, that number, it still seems absurd. What is it, 3 for 60 or 3 for 57 or whatever the hell it was.
Mm-hmm.
They went Rondo and trying to.
I think it's safe to say we were all somewhat wrong about what happened with Atlanta, outside of like letting Pierce start the year and then like eventually going to McMillan whenever they did,
So, I don't know what's going to happen in this Phillies series. Maybe they win in 7 games. Maybe they lose in 7 games. Like, nobody thinks that the Hawks are going to get to like the finals. If they get to the conference finals and they get smoked, is that different from them getting to a 7th game against Philadelphia and then losing? And look, we'll have to see what happens next year and the year after that. So, like, these are really tough conversations to have without knowing the future, which we obviously don't. But it's just very interesting to me that they went out and they spent a lot of money on stuff that, whatever you think of the stuff that they spent their money on, we could all agree it did not make them a championship contender. And more so, it's now actually going to put pressure on them to re-sign some of the guys like Collins. Hunter's going to be extension eligible before you know it. Like, keeping all these pieces in place for maybe a very, 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 very good but not great team. Like, was it worth it? Like, what was this year worth for Atlanta? And just because they're not going to win the championship this year, does that mean that, like, okay, well, maybe they're a trade away, and like maybe someone sees what Trae Young is doing on the biggest stage in sports and like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go play in Atlanta with that guy. But so these are the interesting conversations, which is why I don't think it always has to come down to, is your move making it, like, bringing you directly from point A to point B, where point B is a ticker tape parade? No, then don't do the move. I think the conversation is more nuanced than that. And I think if Leon Rose sits back and is just judging, and I don't think he will, is judging every move by that and that alone, I don't think that's the right move. I think there needs to be some nuance in these discussions and thought processes around who to sign and who to trade for, this, that. But again, we have a whole summer to talk about all that. So.
Yeah, and it then leads to probably the last part of this convo, and it's what needs to happen going forward. Like, we're recording this on Wednesday at 5:00, so game 2 of both the it's just the Sun series is going on tonight, right? Oh, the Bucks are playing. Oh my God, the Bucks. So Bucks and Nets is also tonight too.
No,
that's tomorrow. Okay.
That's tonight. So tomorrow is Bucks, Nets, and Clippers, Jazz. Today, as you are listening to this on a Thursday, and the Suns Nuggets game will have happened already. So
what do you want? What necessarily are you rooting for, and what do you think as a result of what you're rooting for? I think it'll coincide with what is best for the Knicks going into this offseason.
I'll just take it series by series. I don't think the Clippers, what happens there, and to them or the Jazz, I don't think it matters.
Okay. So
anymore.
Kawhi, that pipe dream's gone.
It's gone for me. If he signs here and you want to clip this and throw it back in my face all over Twitter, please.
Deal. Noted.
I'm the happiest person in the world. But the Kawhi ship has sailed for me personally. Although I think maybe there's a Patrick Beverley salary dump.
No.
Okay. Anyway, the Sun series is, it's funny. We're back to it's the third fucking offseason in a row. We're back to having a Chris Paul discussion. It's amazing. What you're gonna have to pay that guy, to me, like sitting here and being like, man, I hope Chris Paul wants to come and take 3 years and $100 million worth of, or something close to that, of our money. That's where my spidey sense goes off. I'm like, something about that doesn't jive. Especially with the other options that are available at point guard this summer, and I realize none of them are Chris Paul. But this is a guy that is getting older. We're seeing him literally physically break down in front of our eyes. Maybe that's rude of me to say, but his shoulders are all kinds of fucked up.
Yeah, Chris Paul's shortcomings in the playoffs, his injuries, are masked a bit by the fact. Oh, hey, Skylar. Are masked a bit by the fact that he's got a Devin Booker to shoulder some of the offensive burden throughout, which, is going to be good for him. And probably why he resigns in Phoenix this offseason over anything that he could have with the Knicks.
That's the other part of it. I think I think he'll wind up re-signing. And then as far as the rest of the East, I mean, Philly and my goodness, this kid. We'll finish this up soon. Philly and Atlanta, does that influence the Knicks one way or the other?
So I know this is sacrilege, Knicks fans, but I'm kind of rooting for Atlanta because being able to say that you lost to a team that was good enough to blown away. It puts this season more into context. And so if Atlanta beats Philly and then they get to the conference finals and it's like, well, that team clearly was just a year ahead of us. And if you swallow your pride and it's like, no, they cheat, they hunt for fouls. Well, then that's your prerogative. But I think if you look at it more with the sense of they built something, they didn't make any, yes, the Luka thing happened, but they built something from that draft around a guy successfully. It more puts into context what the Knicks can then do. And whether Julius is the guy, regardless or not, I think at least for me, it makes me feel better that it wasn't just going to happen to us this playoffs. They didn't go to Philly, look completely overmatched, and it's we couldn't beat that team. And it's more that team.
Oh well, that ship
actually was as good.
No,
I hope it sailed.
This
is where you not being on Twitter, you miss some of the scuttlebutt of the Hawks actually aren't that good.
I'll live with that loss. That'll go right next to Tibbs isn't actually that good of a coach. Those takes were fun in the beginning of the year.
The other part of the Philly series, I think is if Philly, they then see that Ben Simmons isn't the guy.
So, and that's what's interesting to me.
Because then that's a different conversation.
He's a name, and again, well, actually, I'm sure someone else has said this. Whatever. I've heard Simmons' name. I'll just say it. But that dates back to Mills. I mean, that's probably true of 29 other teams are probably sitting around talking about, I wonder when Philly's going to blow it up.
He's a clutch guy, right? Or is he Jay-Z's brand?
He's clutch.
He's clutch. All right. I didn't know if there was a CAA connection or not.
Well, no, Embiid's the CAA guy.
That's who it is.
So
I think Philly would choose Embiid over Simmons, though.
Oh well, but this year confirmed and especially now that Embiid's going to be able to get the Supermax, Embiid's not going anywhere. Right. Simmons on the other hand, obviously the Knicks and Sixers don't make for ideal trade partners. No. They don't make for ideal.
They don't make not yet.
They don't make for ideal trade partners. It doesn't mean that there can't be a three-way trade. And I don't know what that trade would be. Maybe if Washington wants to blow it up, send Bradley Beal to Philly. We get Simmons, and we send Washington all the picks under the moon and a young player or two. That would be interesting. Maybe there's another player out there who I'm not thinking of that fits that bill. So that's interesting. And then the other series, Brooklyn and Milwaukee. We're talking about the end.
I think that more, as far as the Knicks are concerned, it would change what the window is. The pressure for Leon. If the Nets are really just going to be able to treat the regular season like it doesn't matter, and then show up every playoffs for the next 2 or 3 years and just say, all right, we're here and we're going to roll over everybody and we're going to win 3 straight titles. Yeah. Then that takes all the pressure away from Leon Rose. Just wait until that window for them is closed. It's only been 3 or 4. It's only been 3 or 4 year windows anyway.
I don't think he's ever going to operate like that. One, because it's the Knicks and the Nets, and it's the city, and it's MSG, and James Dolan's the owner of the team. But we already proved that.
The Nets built a super team, and the Nets are still irrelevant in this city.
Here's the other. Yes, true. But I still don't think Leon's going to sit around and be like, all right, we'll wait for the Nets run to be over, specifically because of the health issues involved with those 3 guys. And
that's fair. No, that's fair.
And we're literally seeing that play out right now. I mean,
except it hasn't mattered. That's the thing.
It hasn't mattered yet, but
we could be talking a week from now. It could be $3-2, and it's like, well, Claudio, you were stupid.
I know KD catches a lot of shit from Knicks fans. He's caught a lot of shit from me because I think he's what's the right word for Kevin Durant? Thin-skinned. which causes me a great deal of amusement.
He's the worst version of millennial, is how I would put
That's
it.
exactly what he is.
Yes.
Other than maybe Kyrie Irving, they're tied at the top. Let's just say I hate that fucking team in every way possible. That said, I don't want to wish ill on Kevin Durant physically. He had trauma already of the torn Achilles, but like he's a wrong step away or landing the wrong way away from like it, change again, everything changes. So I don't think Leon will sit around and just concede anything.
Let's be clear. I'm not saying concede. I'm saying
no, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
The window is different if like the pressure's different, because then if the Nets are able to do this, then they're the number one like buyout, vet minimum, ring chaser destination.
But they're going to be that anyway.
Right. So then
or the Lakers for as long as.
So then what's the pressure to trade everything for a splash move when the smart move is to build up your assets and build what's here like they did this season?
Because again, this is a much longer conversation, but I don't think I think the notion of let's sit around and build up our assets, it is, and Jeremy talks about this sometime. The bill comes due very soon these days in the NBA. Look at Phoenix. Phoenix is about to shell out some obscene number for DeAndre Ayton. A year after that, it's going to be, they're both in, what am I talking about? They're both in the same draft class. And Mikal Bridges. Guess what? Those two guys are about to cost them upwards of 60 million, not 60, but like Mikal's going to get over 20 a year. Andre's going to get close to 30 a year. The bill comes due. Guess what? If RJ Barrett goes out next year and has the type of year that we all expect him to have, do you think like there's going to be the Steve Mills bullshit? Like, oh no, Kristaps is okay. He's okay waiting. Fuck that. You think RJ is going to be like, yeah, no, it's fine. I'll wait for it. No, he's like, where's my 4-year something close to the max?
But that speaks to more what I'm saying, because the splash move would be, and I know whether people want to admit it or not, the number one trade asset the Knicks have is RJ Barrett.
Of course,
the number one overreacting move would be trading RJ. I'm not suggesting
that's
what I'm saying is the pressure to make a big splash that is trading your best asset for somebody.
But again, like God willing, Obi Toppin and Emmanuel quickly work out, and it's wonderful and amazing. But again, when you start re-signing these people to all of this money, and let's just say for argument's sake, the Knicks go out this summer and sign. I don't want to. Whoever I name, people are going to be pissed off because they're going to be like, why would you sign him? Pick the name of the player that you want the Knicks to sign and give them something, within around what their market value is. Lonzo Ball, Spencer Dinwiddie, whoever.
Point guard is
a point guard. Yeah. Like you're paying that person somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $25 million a year. Now, if you're a smart organization, and the Spurs, this is what their secret always was, and this is why, along with Tim Duncan, they were able to sustain winning for a very long time, is they never got hamstrung by terrible contracts. And, or let me rephrase that, not terrible contracts. They never got hamstrung by contracts that prohibited them from going out and doing other things. I feel like those days are kind of done. And I feel like now a guy, when he's entering the first contract after his rookie contract, if he's a player, like you're going to have to pay that dude. Look at what guy, and again, these are good players, but like go look at what Markelle Fultz and OG Anunoby, and I'm forgetting a couple of the guys that got extensions recently. Right before the season.
LeVert got 4 for $80?
That was the year before.
But that's the thing. That. Like I think people would look at a player like that, a fifth option on a good team.
Yeah, and go look at what these guys are getting, and guess why they're getting that? Because that's their market value, and you have to pay these guys. So. And it's not to say that and if you're a really good organization and you really do draft well, those players will still be value contracts and still be assets on the contracts that you sign them to. But the difference is that whereas right now it's super easy to put, and I'm not saying to do this, RJ Barrett and Obi Toppin and Emmanuel Quickly and whoever else they draft this year into a package for, Bradley Beal and take Bradley Beal into your salary, and it's easy peasy. once those guys are all on their second contracts, well, it gets a hell of a lot harder to package together these deals. And if suddenly Obi Toppin's the big money guy, but he's not quite at that level of player where he could be the centerpiece of a deal, then you got to hope the rookies that you've drafted. But now all of a sudden you're not drafting at the top of the lottery. You're drafting 19th and 20th and 32nd. So again, I've gone on way too long already, but these are the issues that come when you're like, let's just play it safe and smart and build the core and the asset base and all that. Like, you have to be aggressive at some point because otherwise you're going to be
I agree. Like, in theory, I agree. It's
hard.
Look, that poll I put up about would you trade RJ Barrett for Dame, as much as it was more just to see what the general consensus was, it's because I understand, like, if you want Dame Lillard, prove it. Like, that's what it would cost. And it's why I probably end up on the side of, like, see what RJ is, see what Julius is. Although I think if he'll accept 4 for 106, 3 for 106, I'd do it. But.
And I could sit here and I could tell you unequivocally that if the Knicks have a chance to get Damian Lillard this summer, the Knicks are going to get Damian Lillard this summer. It does not matter what it costs.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They'll haggle and they'll negotiate and they'll like whatever. But like,
so that tune's changed. Like, you would think they would trade RJ for Dame if it came down to it.
It has, because I woke up and I started watching the playoffs and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. If you don't have one of these 7 or 8 guys, nothing you fucking do makes a hell of a difference. You have all the, it just doesn't matter.
I agree, which is why, like, the point I tried to make when you were at the game for Game 5, the pregame was spent mostly defending why I put the poll up, but more with the idea, and this now circles back to Leon Rose and Worldwide West and Brock Aller. They now have my trust after this season. What they did this year, whether it be the Thibodeau thing, like every single piece during the regular season, Noel, Bullock, the drafting quickly, sticking with Obi Toppin through some growing pains, trading for Derrick Rose, going all in on Julius. Everything seemed to work out, except for a point guard we're never going to talk about again. And as a result, I'm actually excited for an offseason for the first time realistically for the first time since 2010. And it's because 2019, it felt like this pipe dream that everybody was preaching to us, that we needed to see it confirmed. And then when it never happened, it was like, see, of course it didn't work out. Now there's actually some reason for optimism. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
And we should all be excited and optimistic. And I am excited and optimistic. And I don't think they're going to have an opportunity to trade for Damian Lillard this summer. And I'm fine with that. I don't want them to trade RJ Barrett. I like watching RJ Barrett. I would love for him to spend his career in New York. And I hope that there's a way that he can. But I'm just, they'll make whatever signings they make, and they'll make whatever trades they make, and they'll upgrade the talent marginally, in this way and that way. And it's not going to put them on a track to contention right away. But as long as you continue to be smart and you don't do any like overtly bad moves that block you out from doing other moves later down the line, that's the only reason I'm saying it doesn't, I guess maybe I hope it doesn't sound like I'm contradicting myself, because on one hand, I'm saying it's okay to make margin moves. Margin moves are important because they get you to the place where you could then make the big move, which is the goal. But on the other hand, I'm also saying when the time comes to make the big move, you do not turn your back on that. You make the move.
Yeah, I agree. This is very pro Melo trade, by the way, where you're going with this.
Well, that was just a stupid negotiation carried out by an idiot.
You're talking about the owner, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not want to relitigate the Melo trade. That's a whole other podcast. Regardless, I think that is why I think this postseason I'm kind of rooting for the Suns to win it all eventually, because then the quick fix is Chris Paul wins a title and now goes and plays for Leon for 3 for 90.
Listen, who knows? We'll see what happens. There's going to be.
What's your new finals pick, by the way? Because you had Lakers Nets as your finals pick.
Oh, God! If you asked me that 48 hours ago, I would have said Clippers Nets. And if you're asking me right now, I will say Jesus Christ.
Why isn't it still Clippers Nets? I know Game 1 happened last night, but I was still pretty. Like, I don't think Donovan Mitchell can score 45 points a game.
No, I know. I mean, I'll say Suns Nets.
Suns Nets. Okay, I have the same at this point, and I think that the storyline in that is fun because when we had Mike on from the Suns pod, the timeline, I think is what they called it. He mentioned all the storylines. Like it's the Suns against Nash, D'Antoni, and Amari. You know, it's Chris Paul. It's almost exactly the blueprint of the 2011 playoffs, where it's a guy that's never won a title finally getting there against the latest creation of a super team.
Well, in his prime versus what Chris Paul is now, which is not his prime, but it's also a better team around him. Yeah, but listen, you could tell me Jazz Nets. You could tell me obviously Clippers Nets. What
do you think the league wants?
What do I think the league wants? I think the league wants Clippers Nets, obviously.
That actually speaks to a larger narrative that all these little brothers in their cities, because the Islanders are about to, I know you don't follow hockey, the Islanders are probably going to win, at least compete for the Stanley Cup. They're trending upward is what I'll say. The Islanders,
That's fun.
If they win tonight, which I hope I jinx it, if the Islanders win tonight, they advance to the conference finals. They will have eliminated Boston. Okay. And then that bodes well for the Mets going into the summer. So
that's fantastic.
Oh, by the way, I made my latest Hail Mary bet, by the way. It's Jacob deGrom to win MVP. And I got pretty decent odds, and he's having the best season I've ever seen, John. It's not even close.
I may have to tune into a baseball game at some point.
Yeah.